Let's think about desire for a moment. Human beings are creatures of appetite. From the time we're children, the instinct is simple: see it, want it, take it. The cookie in the jar, the toy on the shelf, the attention of a parent, it's hardwired into us to pursue what feels good now. That's not its biology. The problem is not that we desire, the problem is that we rarely train ourselves to direct desire. Left unchecked, it becomes impulse. And impulse is the great thief of destiny. Psychologists have long known this. You may have heard of the famous marshmallow experiment. A child is placed in a room with one marshmallow and told they can eat it now or wait 15 minutes and receive two. Some children gobble it instantly. Others squirm, fidget, cover their eyes, sing to themselves, anything to resist the urge. The real lesson isn't the marshmallow. It's what it reveals. Those who can master themselves in small moments are often the ones who thrive in the larger arenas of life. The ability to delay gratification is not just about saying no to sugar, it's about saying yes to the future version of yourself. Desire by itself is neutral. It's simply energy. It becomes destructive only when it controls you rather than you controlling it. Think of desire as fire. Fire can warm your house or burn it to the ground. The question is whether you put in a fireplace or let it run wild. Discipline is the fireplace. It gives shape to your energy. It directs your passion toward a greater outcome. But without discipline, that same passion can consume you, leading to habits and choices that cost far more than they reward. Now, here's where it gets interesting. Most people think discipline is about deprivation. They imagine delayed gratification as the boring life. No fun, no joy, no spontaneity. That's a shallow way of looking at it. True discipline doesn't eliminate pleasure, it magnifies it. Because when you delay, you're not really saying no, you're saying not yet. You're telling your brain, I choose something bigger, something better, something more aligned with who I intend to become. That shift in perspective transforms discipline from punishment into empowerment. Philosophically, this comes down to one profound question. Do you want to be ruled by your appetites, or do you want to rule them? The Stoic philosophers in ancient Rome taught that freedom isn't doing whatever you want. Freedom is mastery of self. A person enslaved to impulse may look free on the outside, but inside they are shackled. They cannot walk away from the craving, cannot say no to the urge. That's not freedom, that's captivity dressed up as liberty. The person who can delay gratification, on the other hand, is truly free. They may feel the pull of desire, but they choose when, how, and if they satisfy it. And here's the paradox: the stronger your ability to delay gratification, the more your capacity for joy increases. Why? Because pleasure without restraint dulls itself. The more you indulge instantly, the less satisfying each indulgence becomes. But when you wait, when you cultivate patience, you amplify appreciation. The first bite of food after a fast, the paycheck after months of work, the success after years of labor. Those are sweeter, richer, more meaningful than the cheap thrill of a shortcut. There's also a deeper psychological layer. Every time you resist an immediate temptation, you're not just making a decision, you're sculpting your identity. You're proving to yourself that you are the kind of person who can choose long-term vision over short-term impulse. And identity compounds. The more you reinforce that story about yourself, the stronger your belief becomes. Soon, it's not just, I delayed a desire. It's, I am disciplined. I am patient. I am in control. That's powerful. Because eventually, you no longer fight temptation. It loses its grip. You've rewritten your relationship with desire. But let's be honest, this is hard. The modern world is engineered to erode your discipline. Everywhere you look, notifications, ads, fast food, instant credit, social media likes, it's all designed to trigger dopamine, the brain's chemical of reward over and over. We are surrounded by marshmallows on every screen. To practice delayed gratification today is almost a revolutionary act. It means stepping outside of the cultural current that screams now, and daring to whisper later. That whisper is where power lies. It's the space between desire and decision, where you pause and ask, what do I want most? Not just what do I want now? If you can hold that pause, if you can master that gap, you gain something that most people never experience: sovereignty over yourself. And that sovereignty is the foundation of every form of lasting success: financial, relational, spiritual. So the psychology of delayed gratification isn't really about desire at all. It's about control. Control not as suppression, but as mastery. To master desire is to master yourself. And to master yourself is to become the kind of person who creates a future rather than consumes it before it arrives. The next time you feel that pull toward an immediate reward, remember this: you're not just deciding whether to satisfy a craving, you're deciding who you are becoming. And if the future version of you could speak, they'd probably say, don't settle for the marshmallow. Wait for me, I'm worth it. Think about the power of waiting. Not waiting passively like someone standing in line at a store, but waiting with intention. Waiting because you understand that what you're investing today is not just for today. That's the real essence of delayed gratification. It's not about denial, it's about multiplication. It's about recognizing that every small choice, every disciplined moment, every sacrifice compounds into something exponentially greater over time. This is the same principle that governs money, relationships, influence, even health. In finance, we call it compound interest. You deposit a small sum into an account, you let it sit, and over time, the interest grows not only on your initial deposit, but on the accumulated interest itself. At first, the growth seems slow, almost invisible. But given enough time, the curve bends upward, and what once looked insignificant becomes extraordinary. That's the mathematics of compounding. And the mathematics of compounding is also the psychology of life. The real danger is that most people never live long enough with their decisions to see compounding work in their favor. They start a habit, they quit too soon. They plant seeds, but they dig them up before they sprout. They begin projects, but they abandon them when the results don't show up immediately. What they don't realize is that compounding is quiet in the beginning. It doesn't announce itself with fireworks. It whispers. It builds. It works underground before it ever blossoms in the open. Consider skills. If you practice a skill for 15 minutes a day, it won't feel like much. A month later, you may not notice a big change. 6 months later, you might still doubt it's working. But give it 3 years, 5 years, 10 years, suddenly you are operating at a level that feels effortless to you, but extraordinary to everyone else. That's compounding. You delayed the gratification of entertainment or distraction, and you gained mastery in return. Or think about relationships. Small acts of respect, kindness, patience, those look trivial in the moment. But when you practice them consistently, they compound into trust, into intimacy, into bonds that are unshakable. On the other hand, when you give into the instant gratification of anger, impatience, or neglect, you erode what could have been built. Relationships grow the same way wealth grows, through steady investment, not sudden withdrawals. The philosophy behind this is profound. Life doesn't reward intensity, it rewards consistency. Anybody can sprint for a moment. Anybody can push themselves for a week. But the person who is willing to delay gratification, to stay consistent without needing the instant payoff, is the one who eventually reaps the multiplied harvest. The consistent drip of water carves through stone, not because it is powerful in the moment, but because it is persistent over time. And here's what makes compounding so beautiful. It creates a kind of inevitability. Once you commit to consistent discipline, the results become less about if and more about when. It's not a gamble anymore. It's a law. Just like gravity pulls objects to the ground, compounding pulls disciplined effort toward abundance. But the law only works if you stay in the game long enough. If you keep interrupting the process, you never reach the curve where growth becomes exponential. This is why delayed gratification is not just a moral virtue, it's a strategic advantage. People who live only for the moment never experience compounding because they're constantly cashing out early. They eat the seed instead of planting it. They take the easy win instead of waiting for the greater reward. But the disciplined few, the ones who understand the power of waiting, they let their investments, whether of time, money, or energy, accumulate. And when the compound effect finally kicks in, it separates them from everyone else. But make no mistake, the waiting is uncomfortable. The waiting tests you. Because for a long time, you will look around and see others enjoying their marshmallows while you sit with none. You'll see peers indulging in pleasures you've chosen to postpone. And in those moments, you will question if it's worth it. That's the hardest part. Delayed gratification always feels like loss in the short term. But it's only loss if you measure life in days instead of decades. So let me challenge you to shift your measurement. Don't ask, what did I get today? Ask, what am I building over the next 10 years? Don't ask, what pleasure am I missing? Ask, what greatness am I compounding? That simple shift in perspective changes everything. Because once you think in terms of compounding, waiting is no longer a burden. It becomes a privilege. You know that every not yet is actually a bigger yes in disguise. The discipline of delayed gratification is really the discipline of trust. Trusting that your effort will pay off, trusting that your sacrifice is not wasted, trusting that compounding is always at work, even when you cannot see it. And when you live with that trust, you gain something most people never have, the confidence that your future will be greater than your present, not by accident, but by design. So the next time you feel impatient, the next time you wonder if your discipline is making a difference, remember this compounding doesn't shout, it whispers. And those who learn to listen to that whisper will one day stand on a mountain that others can't even see. Patience doesn't just pay, it multiplies. When we talk about delayed gratification, most people imagine the outcome, the reward, the payoff, the breakthrough. But what often gets overlooked is the space in between, the waiting. And it's in that waiting where the real transformation happens. Because waiting is not just about time passing. Waiting is a process that shapes who you are becoming. You don't simply wait for results, you are refined by the wait itself. Think about it. Anyone can be disciplined for a day. Anyone can resist temptation when the prize is right around the corner. But what about when the reward is years away? What about when you are doing the work faithfully, yet no applause, no recognition, no visible fruit shows up? That is when character is tested. That is when patience is forged. And that is when the discipline of delayed gratification moves from theory into identity. This is why the waiting room of life is so important. It feels like nothing is happening, but in reality, everything is happening. Seeds don't sprout the moment you put them in the soil. They break open in the darkness first. Roots grow down before stems grow up. The waiting season is the proving ground. It's the forge where impatience burns away and perseverance is strengthened. Without it, the fruit you're after won't last, even if you somehow got it sooner. Most people underestimate how vital this phase is. They believe success is about talent, luck, or connections. But time and again, we see that the people who build lasting success are those who can endure obscurity. They can keep showing up when nobody's watching. They can hold on to a vision when evidence seems absent. That quiet resilience becomes the very foundation of their greatness. Because character is not built on the stage, it's built in the shadows. Philosophically, this speaks to the paradox of discipline. What feels like restriction is actually expansion. You think waiting is robbing you of opportunities, but it's actually preparing you to carry them. If you receive something before you're ready, it doesn't feel like a blessing. It feels like a burden. How many times have we seen people collapse under the weight of success they weren't prepared to sustain? The money that destroyed them, the fame that crushed them, the opportunity that revealed their lack of maturity. That's what happens when gratification is not delayed long enough to build the structure of character. When most people hear the phrase delayed gratification, the first thing they think of is sacrifice. They picture themselves saying no to pleasures, turning down opportunities, or depriving themselves of comfort. In their minds, it becomes a narrative of restriction, as if discipline means cutting away the very joy of life. But this is a shallow interpretation. The truth is that delayed gratification doesn't enslave you, it frees you. It is not the loss of pleasure, it is the liberation from the prison of impulse. Here's why. When you live by impulse, you are constantly reacting. Every craving pulls you, every distraction claims you, every temptation controls you. You spend your days at the mercy of whatever desire shouts loudest in the moment. That may look like freedom, doing whatever you feel like doing, but it's really bondage. Because if you cannot say no to yourself, you are not in control. You are being controlled, and a life without control is a life without direction. Now contrast that with the person who has mastered discipline of waiting. They feel the same impulses, the same cravings, but they don't obey them blindly. They step back, they choose. They say, I'll enjoy that later, because right now I'm focused on building something greater. That kind of discipline doesn't shrink your life, it expands it. It gives you the power to live intentionally instead of reactively. You're no longer a slave to the next rush of dopamine. You're the one deciding where your energy and attention go. That's real freedom. Think of it like this. If you always indulge instantly, life becomes narrow. You trade the possibility of greatness for the certainty of momentary comfort. You spend what you earn, you consume what you create, you settle for what is easy. And then you wonder why your life feels smaller than it could be. But when you delay gratification, when you wait, you expand the horizon of your future. You give yourself permission to imagine something bigger than the immediate. You open the door to choices that are not even available to the impulsive. Psychologically, this comes down to who owns your future. When you live by impulse, your future is mortgaged to your present. Every short-term decision steals from what you could have had, but when you practice delayed gratification, the opposite happens. You invest in your future self. You give them more options, more resources, more capacity. In a very real sense, delayed gratification is a transfer of power from the hands of your cravings to the hands of your destiny. Philosophically, this is profound, because what you're really doing is trading one kind of freedom for another. The freedom of impulse says, I can do whatever I want right now. The freedom of discipline says, I can design the life I want in the long run. Which one is greater? Which one is lasting? The first enslaves you to your urges. The second elevates you above them. The first gives you a moment's pleasure. The second gives you a lifetime of meaning. And here's the irony: when you learn to delay gratification, you don't experience less joy, you experience more. Why? Because joy is magnified when it's earned, when it's prepared for, when it's the result of alignment between your vision and your reality. The same meal tastes better after you've fasted. The same dollar feels richer when you've saved and invested. The same relationship feels deeper when it's built with patience. What feels like sacrifice in the moment transforms into fulfillment in the long run. But let's be honest, the path of discipline isn't easy. It requires saying no when everyone else is saying yes. It requires choosing later when everything in you screams for now. It requires a kind of inner strength that the world doesn't often celebrate. And that's why so few experience the true freedom that delayed gratification offers. Because it's easier to indulge than to endure. It's easier to grasp at crumbs than to wait for a feast. But the ones who choose to wait, who choose to endure, discover a freedom that impulsive living can never provide. So the next time you are faced with a choice, don't just ask, what do I want right now? Ask, what will give me freedom tomorrow? Don't just ask, what will satisfy me in this moment? Ask, what will liberate me in the long run? Because every decision is a trade-off between captivity and freedom, between living by appetite and living by intention. The discipline of delayed gratification is not a burden. It is a gift. It is the key that unlocks a life not limited by impulse, but expanded by vision. And when you live this way, you stop being a prisoner of your desires and start becoming a master of your destiny. So remember this: every moment of restraint is not a loss of freedom. It is the very act of reclaiming it. And the greatest freedom you can ever know is the freedom of becoming the person you were meant to be. The discipline of waiting does more than just strengthen patience. It clarifies priorities. It forces you to ask, do I really want this? Am I willing to pay the price? The things you are willing to wait for are the things that truly matter. And the things you're not willing to wait for often reveal desires that are shallow or temporary. Waiting is the filter that separates impulse from conviction. And here's where the psychological depth comes in. When you practice delayed gratification, you're not just resisting something external, you're rewiring something internal. You're teaching your brain that discomfort is not danger, that uncertainty is not defeat, and that lack of immediacy is not lack of progress. You're literally retraining your nervous system to endure, to hold steady, to resist panic. That kind of inner transformation cannot be bought, faked, or shortcut. It is only earned in the waiting. This is why some of the wisest voices throughout history have praised patience as one of the highest virtues. The Stoics saw it as strength. Spiritual traditions called it endurance. Even modern psychology frames it as emotional regulation, the ability to manage yourself when circumstances are beyond your control. Whatever label you put on it, the truth remains. Patience in the waiting is the soil where character grows. But let's not romanticize it. Waiting is uncomfortable. It exposes your insecurities. It amplifies your doubts. It tempts you to settle for something easier, quicker, smaller. And that's exactly why it's valuable, because the very act of resisting those impulses is what transforms you. You're not just holding back from lesser things. You're becoming someone capable of greater things. So when you find yourself in a season where nothing seems to be moving, when you feel like you're stuck in the middle of the process, don't despise it. That is your training ground. That is where the invisible work is happening, the kind of work that no one applauds, but everyone eventually sees. Because when the waiting is over and the results finally arrive, people will marvel at your strength, your clarity, your resilience. What they won't see is that those qualities were forged in silence and delay and discipline. The truth is simple. You don't just wait for the reward. You become the reward. Who you are becoming in the waiting is far more valuable than what you are waiting for. Because the moment will pass, the applause will fade, the prize will eventually lose its shine, but character endures. So remember this: the waiting room isn't a punishment, it's preparation. And if you can stay faithful in the waiting, you will step into a future that impatience could never buy. The delay is not denial, it's development. And those who embrace it will discover that what they gained in character was far greater than what they were waiting to receive.